Hey, today we're going to make a NAS, so let's just jump right into it. First of all, I'm going to delete the default stuff on my screen. I'm going to go in and create a mesh plane, rotate it on X by 90 degrees, edit it, and then scale it down to the rough size of the NAS device. Okay, now I'm going to bevel the edges. I'm going to do a segment of 2, shape of 0.5. I'm going to extrude it out to the relative shape of what I think the NAS should be. I'm going to look at the back, and now I'm going to tie up the geometry by making all quads. And I will say this particular modeling session will have some ingons, but they're typically on flat surfaces, which won't screw with the shape of it, but you'll see in some cases we're going to have to kind of do it in order to keep from spending too much time on making the topology super perfect. Going to inset the face here. And what I'm trying to do is create like a lip or beveled lip off the front of this device. So pull the face in a little bit with extrude. And now it looks like a pretty decent shape here. So now what I want to do is I want to kind of come in here and bevel this off so it stays nice and tight when we run sub D later on. Okay. So now, next thing I want to do is, in looking at the particular NAS that I'm designing this after, which is a Ugreen NAS. I'm not sponsored by them. I do own one, and I think they're pretty awesome. I think aesthetically it's one of the nicer looking NASs. I'm now creating the black plastic piece that's in front of the NAS. I call it insulation. I don't know what it actually is, but this is what I'm modeling in now. So I selected some faces off of that lip, created a new object. I'm going in, I'm going to extrude this object down to give it some thickness, like so. And if you notice, the bottom is a little bit taller than the top. And zoom out and get a better look at what I'm doing here. Okay. And I want to create a look cut because it transitions a little bit here. And you'll see that with what we do here shortly. I'm going to run another support loop here. It's really to help with the transition, and I'm going to grab these verts up here in the bevel. I'm taking a look at something. I'm just trying to get a good lay of the land before I make my next move here. So let's grab these 3 and then these 3 vertices that are part of the bevel, and because it's thick, I want to grab the ones on the inside as well. And I want to pull these up first because, like I said, the bottom is taller, has more of that material than the top. Okay, so that looks pretty good, but it's not quite perfect yet. And then I want to take the face of the body of the NAS, and then I want to bring it out to kind of match with the top of the lip of that insulation. Just kind of like edge it up a little bit, like you see here in the video. All right. So now I'm back into the insulation part, kind of looking around, figuring out what I'm going to do next. I'm going to grab those verts on the front. And what I want to do is I want to move just that part of it back towards the face of the NAS. And I can do that literally just by moving the vertices. Like so. All right, so that looks pretty good. All right, so now we're done with that. Let's go ahead and rename our meshes here. So I'm going to call this a model.nas.body. That's the main shape of it. And then the next one is model.nas.insulation. And that's that little barrier around the front of it. Okay, and I'm going to put them in a collection called model.nas. And you know how I like to do. I like to just add color to the collection so I can just quickly eyeball them. And all that stuff's hanging out in there. Okay. Now I'm going back into installation. I'm gonna select some, I'm gonna select this edge going around right here. And I wanna bevel it off. I could have used a crease as well, but I just wanted to do a bevel because I just felt like I could control it a little bit better with a bevel. Because when we run sub D, I want there to be a nice visual transition there, so it's just not perfectly rounded. I want it to have like a little bit of a break, so the bevel is going to kind of help us with that. And just to keep the structural integrity of this shape, I want to bevel these edges too around it. So let's do that. So I'm going to grab these edges that make up the structure of the back and on the inside of it, and let's run a nice little tight bevel on that. Let's put an edge support loop here. Let's put one here. Let's grab the front edge and let's put a nice little tight bevel on it as well. And like I said, this is to help the structural integrity of the shape when we run sub D. Now, if we don't run sub D, you really don't need to do this. Okay, that looks pretty good. So I want to put some edge loops in here to kind of reinforce the sides. That looks good. Let's do some on the other side, same amount. And let's do some on the sides near the bottom where we have that one edge loop that like kind of splits everything up. Okay. And what that's going to do is when we run sub D, the side walls of that shape are just going to be a lot more straight because we have a lot more support loops constricting the ability for sub D to bend it. All right, so let's hit Control S to save the file. And now take a look at something. Let me disable sub D real quick. And I'm just trying to think about my next move here. What I want to do next. So let's tackle the feet. So I'm going to come in. I want to create a UV sphere. I want to edit it. Go to edit mode, size it down. Size it down by a lot. The feet look like cross-cut peels almost. They kind of have that shape, which you guys will see here in a second. So I've got a whole UV sphere. I'm getting the size of it about like what it looks like on the actual real thing. And what I want to do is go to X-ray mode, and then I want to select literally half of it, half of this sphere, and I want to delete the verts. And zoom in so we can work a little bit better. And if you accidentally miss some things, you got some extra verts left over, just manually go in there, stand side ortho, and just delete them. Then I'm going to go in and I want to make sure I'm still in X-ray mode. I want to grab all of the vertices that are straight across, should be a vertical line, and I want to extrude them out on Y. That's just making that pill shape. It's elongating that set of vertices there. Just kind of like taking a quick look at the feet on this thing. And I want to see how long I want to drag this out, or how long I want to extrude this out. Okay, let's come out a little bit more. Okay, now I want to move my 3D cursor there because I want to change the origin. And the reason why I want to do that is because I'm going to run a mirror modifier on it, so we don't have to do too much work, and then I'm just going to mirror it. So now we got a full peel. So if you ever guys want to see a tutorial on how to make a peel, just watch this video. We just made one. But we're not finished. So what I want to do is go back to X-ray, and now I want to only select half of it from the top half of this because I want to delete those vertices. So now we have the shape that we're after for the feet. So now we've got one foot. Let's go ahead and put it in place on the NAS body. So what we're going to have to do is change our view to bottom ortho so I can get it into place properly. And now we're going to work smart, not hard. Just make sure it looks right from the side as well. I'm gonna like tuck it up inside the body of the NAS a little bit. So now I need 4 of these, right? We've got one. There's no need to reduplicate this 4 times. So what I want to do is go into my modifier properties, create an array, and then move it on the X factor to where it just looks about right. So now we have 2. We need 2 more. So the quick way to doing it is creating another array in the modifier stack and then moving those on the y-axis. But you gotta set the X to 0 first. So I moved them on the Y. You guys know how to do this, so I just kind of cut the motion of that out. Now what I want to do is select all this stuff, make sure that the body is the primary mesh, and I want to parent all of these together. All right, looking good. All right, so now let's go in and let's create a cube. And let's scale it down, because what I want to do is I want to create the cutout that the hard drive bays are going to fit in. So in other words, we're making a big giant hole right here in the front of this device. And I'm just eyeballing it. And I'm gonna grab these edges. And I think you guys know what's coming next. We're going to bevel them because it has a beveled opening. So I'm going back to front ortho. I want to take a quick look at it, and then I just want to put a nice little bevel in here. I want 3 segments. I may do 4. Just want to see how nice of a bevel it gives me. All right, so it's stuck with 2. So let's just go ahead and tie up the geo here. All right, isolate it. Let's do the same on the other side. Yeah, this is the fun part here. All right, so that's done. So let's look at it back in place. I bring everything back, go to object mode, and let's push it into place because I want to see how deep this thing goes into the body. All right, so let's go to X-ray mode so I can see everything. I've got my cube selected, and I want to just scale it out. If the front end of it's hanging out, that's fine because we're going to use it as a cutter to make the hole. So let's slide it into place because this is how deep back that cut is going to go into the body of the NAS. All right, let's come back to object mode, and what I want to do is I want to select, I want to go to my properties here, and I want to have a Boolean. I want to make sure it's on difference, and the object is going to be the cube that we made. And now that we've got a visually disabled cube mesh up here, I'm going to turn it back on because this still allows me to edit that cube because this is a non-destructive workflow. So let's go ahead and put some loop cuts in it. All right, let's look at the front, top, and then let's look at the side here in front. I run a sub D on it, shade smooth, and I want to see what this looks like back in the body. Let's just hide it again so we can see what our hole looks like. And let's save it. Keep in mind that currently this is non-destructive because we have a modifier running on it. And like I said, I named it Cutter. I'm going to drop it in a new collection called Cutter. Hit create, and then I'm just going to give it a red color so I can just visually see it very, very quickly. All right. And anytime we do any Boolean operations, it's a cutter or a union or anything like that, we can keep all that stuff in that collection. So now I'm okay with it. Let's go ahead and apply it. And one thing I did was I went ahead and I changed the topology on it where it wasn't so dense. So now I want to come in here and let's go ahead and create another cube. Let's go into edit mode and scale it down because it's time to fill that hole now. And if you look at the NAS, and I will put a reference photo of one. Probably you'll see at the beginning of the video. You'll see what I'm talking about. This is another piece of like, it's like plastic or rubber molding. It's like, I guess it's like shock insulation or something. That's inside of that hole. So it's not like the drive bays are touching metal on metal. It's like metal, and then there's like a piece of this black rubber or plastic material, and then the drive bays fall into that. My assumption is it cushions the drives, because you know hard drives are susceptible to shock. So what I want to do is grab edges like before, bevel those off. I'm matching it the best I can with the bevel on the hole. I didn't bother measuring it before I applied it, so I'm just eyeballing it. If you want to do this absolutely right, it would have been nice to have measured or written down what my bevel was, my offset was for my bevel, and then applied it to this one as well, and that way the bevels match up perfectly. But as you'll see, it's still going to look really good. So what I'm doing is I'm doing an inset, and what I want to do is I want to take this face that's left over and just push it back in there, because all I'm really trying to do is make this insulation material. Okay, go back to object mode, and let's just move it back inside that cavity. Like so. And you can see right there where the bevels is a little bit different. So I'm like just kind of scaling it into place to make up the difference. But you know, it's a bit of imperfection, which actually you can argue will make the final render look more realistic, as long as the imperfection is not too drastic. All right. So let's go back in here and let's start doing a little bit of cleanup. So first thing I want to do is tie off these vertices and the quads. Yep, before I do that, let's do a couple insets, and then I want to go back and tie these verts into quads. Like so. And just bear with me while we watch paint dry here for a second. Let's put in some support loop cuts. Put in some here as well, and some here as well. Okay. And some on the inside here. And what I'm going to have to do here, because we have big N-gon because of the front, I'm just going to select these two verts horizontally going across. I'm going to hit J and tie them together. I don't have to do it, but it's just a good practice, right? Because you'll see there's going to be some portions of this model I'm going to be okay with leaving N-gons there. So let's grab this edge here. And what I want to do is put a nice little bevel right here, because this is like insulation. The lip of it's going to be a little bit more rounded. So I want to make sure that in the render we see that. And I think you guys can kind of see now that we bring everything back what that inside piece is like. So I'm now moving that mesh out of Cutter, and I'm moving it back into our model.nas collection, and I want to give it a name, model.nas.chamber.insulation. Forgive me for the names, but I'm literally coming up with them on the fly. I didn't plan the naming out at all, so I want to parent it with everything else with that body. So now it's part of that body mesh, and I'm gonna delete the hierarchy of the Cutter because we don't need it anymore, because we applied the the Boolean operation to the body. So it's actually part of the geometry now. All right, and I'm running sub D, and notice the back of this here doesn't have a bevel, so now I need to come in here and make a bevel real quick. There we go. So I'm at running another little bevel on the front. Now I'm running sub D. Sub D is now applied. Looks pretty good. So far we're making good progress. And I turn sub D back on for the body. Got sub D on the main installation part. So I'm looking at some shading issues down here at the bottom, which is pretty common. So what I need to do to fix that is I just need to tie some geometry together. I'm not gonna sit here and let you guys watch all of this because I ended up taking probably about 10 minutes or so doing this when I was making this model. So this is what I have so far after doing that procedure. So now what I want to do to keep the video rolling is I want to create a new cube. I want to go to edit mode, scale it down. And this is going to be one of the drive bays that actually fit into the NAS. In the real world, it's like a little door. It's got like a harness on it. And then your hard drive clips into it and through a SATA connector. And then you can literally slide it in here. It locks into place, and there's like a little flap door. You can close it and lock it. So if you have this in a data center or something like that, people can't just come in very easily and steal your drives out. This is that bay that we're making now. So I'm going to grab these edges, and I've got it sized down pretty good. And just like before, just like with the other cubes we've made in this video, I'm just going to put a nice little bevel on them, because I want the sides up there to be rounded. All right. And I want to move it over on X to kind of fit it in that corner. I just want to see what it looks like. Right now, I'm just kind of checking it out to see how it fits. So now I'm going to grab the front face, the back face, and I want to do an inset. Correction, I did a bevel first. Now let's grab these faces again and do an inset. All right, just kind of taking a look at it and I'm kind of planning out what I want to do next in terms of modeling this bay out. So I'm rescaling it out because I'm just looking at it from the front ortho view and I'm kind of comparing it to the real thing, and I just want to make sure the proportion of this bay drive is more accurate. So now I'm going to come in, tie up the geo, so we don't have that big ingon there, even though it's perfectly fine that we have an ingon here because, like I said, it's flat, so we won't get shading issues off of it. But mainly the reason why I'm doing this is for your benefit, for the viewers here. And notice this is a larger bevel than bevels we've been doing before. All right. So now I'm going on the back. I'm going to deal with it right quick. Do 2 insets. Then yet again, same thing. I'm going to tie off these vertices so we got quads. All right, so now that's done. I'm looking back at the front. And what I want to do is I want to go to face select. I want to select these faces here in the middle. And what I want to do is I want to extrude them in, because just like with the body, I want this front of this bay to have a little bit of a lip on it as well. Just really, really subtle though. Like so. So it gives it a nice appearance there. And just to enhance that appearance, because we do have sub D enabled in my editing right quick, I'm going to put a little bevel around that, so it's just a little bit more detailed. You can see that there's a little bit of difference there. So let me disable sub D so I can see all my edges here and select them appropriately. I'm going to just run a tight little bevel right here. We enable sub D. Let's come back out to object mode. See the difference? A little bit cleaner, a little bit more precise. Okay, so now let's run shade smooth. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. We're not done, however. Let's slide this bay in. And this is going to be a 2-bay NAS versus like a 4-bay or larger. And I'm going to call this model.nas.bay, and I'm going to move it into our collection. Now, looking at the gap on the other side, we're probably going to have to make this a little bit bigger, but that's okay. It's easy enough to do. So I run an array modifier on it on X and have a total of 2. So I did a little bit of resizing. I basically just widened it out in edit mode, not in object mode, so we don't have to reset the scale. And I finally got it to where it's right, because the array copy will do whatever the original does. It'll mimic it. So I'm just sliding it into place, and that looks pretty good. All right. So the drive bay does have some detail to it, so we might as well go ahead and start and begin to think about that. So before I do that, I do want to add in some support loops here on the bay door itself. And I'm actually kind of thinking through this a little bit, because this is going to help us sculpt out our detail on the front of the drive bay by having these support loops here. I don't know if you guys noticed this or not, but for everything I do on that one bay, the one beside it inherits those changes immediately. Okay, so let's see. So this thing has a lock on the front, and it's got like a separate little piece that separates the top part of that door from the bottom. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and tackle that first. It doesn't have to be functional, it just needs to look like it's functional. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these edges right here, and what I want to do is I want to bevel them. I'm just looking to make sure I got everything selected right, and I do. So I want to bevel them right here. I want a 1-segment bevel, and I want to extrude along normals, and I want to like suck it in to make it look like it's inset in here. I guess inset's not the right term, but like I want to suck that in a little bit, just to give it the appearance of depth. So I'm selecting the edges at the bottom, selecting the edges at the top of that bevel we just did, and that extrusion we just did, and I'm running a tight little bevel on that. Just so with sub D on here, it's a little bit more refined, a little bit cleaner. Let's try that again. Yeah, see, and that little bit, nice little tight little bevel there. Okay, so that's done. So now what we need to do is we need to make this little lock button on the front down here. So I'm just going to grab some faces. I'm getting it as centered as possible, and I want to inset them, inset those faces, And then I'm gonna run loop tools and circle. And I wanna scale this circle down to about the size of that button or that lock mechanism. I wanna inset it. And then what I wanna do now that I'm looking at this, all I need to do now is extrude along normals, and I wanna push it in. Then I wanna inset it again very slightly, and then I wanna extrude it back out. So the lock button looks like a separate piece that you can actually turn, even though it's just part of the same geometry. It's all about illusion here, at least for this model, because it's not going to be functional. And then I want to select these edges and make up the actual lock mechanism button, if you will. And I want to bevel those, because as you see, we're doing sub-D modeling right now. Okay. Nice. Looks pretty good. All right, so we'll save our file. And the good news is the lock itself for this is super easy. It's just a rectangle. Doesn't have any weird complex shapes or anything like that. All right, so now what I want to tackle before I do the lock is I want to come down here at the bottom. I want to make the actual power button for the unit. So I moved the 3D cursor down to roughly where it is. I created a plane. I'm going to rotate it on X by 90 degrees. I'm going to go to Edit, scale it down by a lot, and get the rough shape of it, the rough rectangular shape nailed down, and the size of it nailed down. And I'm pausing here because I'm looking back and forth at a reference photo I have. Okay, let's bevel it. You'll see in this video, just like many others, there's a theme in the modeling. So there's a lot of cubes, a lot of planes, a lot of bevels, a lot of extrusions, a lot of insets to make a lot of this stuff. So I'm extruding it out. We're going to support loop here. I'm going to select the face in here. And what I want to do is select both the front and the back. I want to inset them. Don't need to get crazy with it. And then I'm pulling it out just a little bit. Fixing a geo. Making my quads. And actually, if I were just to leave it like it is, it'd be all quads. But I do have some tries up here. But I do want to have a horizontal, 2 horizontal loop cuts going across this. So this is not an all quad solution, but it's on a flat surface and it will work. And even if when we move this flat surface out, will it being a tri, it'll bend just fine and it won't give us any shading issue. All right, so I'm adding another loop cut here so I can take these 2 sides here, that inner inset, and then drag those out. When we run sub-D on it, it's gonna give us a nice rounded edge on the left and the right of this shape here. I'm insetting it, bringing it in by extruding it, insetting it again, and we're going to extrude it back out. This is going to be the actual button that's lit up that you see on the unit once you depress the button and turn the unit on. Then I'm going to grab those faces there, and then I'm going to pull that out. That's essentially the basic shape of the button. So I'm going to grab these edges up here, I want to bevel them. Grab the ones back here in this corner, I want to bevel this as well. Give it structural integrity. We'll run sub-D. And then right down here where this little light part of this button is, I want to make sure this is selected and got a nice little bevel on it as well for the same reason. And right here. places that we'll be able to visually see pretty easy. I just want to make sure they're nice and tight. Okay. Now I'm going to test this by running the level 2 sub D on it here in a second. Let me grab some more edges and bevel before I do that. And you're going to see it's going to have a bow at the top. See how it bows up at the top? So what we need to do is we need to run some vertical edge loops, support loops here, to restrict its ability to bow up at the top when we run sub D. Okay, so now we got it done. Let's run sub D again. You see the difference? So it's not bowing up at the top now. So we run shade smooth, button's done. We're going to rename it model.nas.power-btn for button. All right, and then we got to move it in the collection. Done. All right, so button's done. And looks good and looks correct. All right, so saving our file. So let's parent that button to the body. Boom, done. And while I'm in here, let's go ahead and parent the bay to the body as well. Okay, done. Okay, so now we need to handle the next element, which are there's these lights that go across the front that gives you, you as a user using this NAS, it lets you know if it's connected. One lets you know if it's connected to the network, and the other two lights will blink, showing you drive activity. They're all white. They all look the same. So let's just create these three lights here. So I'm going to start with picking a bunch of faces here. I'm going to inset them down. I'm going to do my circle thing again. I'm going to rotate it so it's a little bit straighter, a little bit cleaner. Right now I'm just focused on getting one of these little areas right. So I'm going to select these three verts. I want to make sure they're aligned horizontally, so I'll scale them on Z. Do an inset. And let's turn sub D back on, and let's suck it in by extruding it inwards. Okay? Because I want the buttons to be inset into the body of the NAS body. Does that make sense? So now I'm going to grab this little edge down here, turn sub D on so I can see the effect, and then I'm going to run a bevel on it just to tighten it up. Just like a defined edge right there. Okay? Nice. So when we zoom back out and you look at the body, you can see we don't have a light in there yet, but we've got like basically an embossed area inside the body where the light goes. So now what I want to do is select all of these faces, because I don't want to have to sculpt this anymore. I just Shift D'd it, created a new selection, which makes a new mesh. And then I want to come back in here and I want to work smart, not hard. So I'm going to create an array modifier. And since I need 3 lights, I'm going to add 2 more. I want a total of 3 instances here. And then I've got them in place and I can see what they're going to look like. So now I hide them. I go back in here into the body and I want to select all of these faces that would correspond to where this thing would be. 1, 2, and 3. And I want to delete them. Delete the faces. So now I got a big gaping hole in my body, and now I want to bring those back in that we copied, and then I graft them back in like so. Turn my array back on. I want to apply my array modifier. So now this is actual geometry. And since I've now taken the body and the selection and merged them back together with hitting Control J, now I can go in and select everything and then merge by distance and tighten the vertices up. And as you see, it merged in a whole bunch of verts. So now we're good here. So now the only thing to do is create the lights, and then we're done with this part as well. I'm coming back in here just kind of doing some renaming cleanup. All right, so now I change that body. All this stuff's got to get parented again back to the body. So I just do it in one shot. Done. All right, so now what I need to do is I need to come in here and select one of these holes. Only need to select one of them. I start at vert right there. Move my 3D cursor to the vert. Come back out in object mode. I want to bring in a new mesh primitive, which is a circle. And in Blender, in order to make a really good circle, you needed a minimum like 8 vertices. So let's do that. 8 verts. I'm gonna leave it on the world view because I'm not in ortho mode, so I don't want to change it to view. And as you can see, that yellow line back there is pretty big. So I rotated it on X. I'm sizing it down by quite a bit. I'm just trying to get where I can see the thing. There we go. And go back to front ortho here in a second, and then just line it up with that hole right there. It's gonna fit in that hole perfect. All right. So now let's move it into the hole after we do a couple things. So I'm extruding and scaling, and I'm essentially making the platform and the back face of this button. And then I want to grid fill it when I'm done extruding and scaling. Boom, done. All right. So now I got to make my button from this basic shape. So what I want to do is I want to extrude it back to give it a little bit of depth, and then I'm going to select this edge here. Now, before I do that, let's move it into place. Now from here, I'm going to go in there in edit mode and edge select mode, and I'll just want that outer edge right there. And then let's come here to kind of a weird perspective and extrude it out. Turn to the side and turn X-ray on so I can see it. Let's extrude out those edges again, and then let's scale them in. You see I'm making a dome shape essentially. Extrude them out, scale them in. We'll zoom in and get a better look on the extrude and scale, and then grid fill. And when I got grid fill done, then I'm gonna take G and Y and move that little face out a little bit. I'm gonna just punch it out a little bit, like that. There you go. So now we got to do a little cleanup work. So I'm gonna isolate the button, or the light, I should say. It's not really a button, it's a light. And then I want to run a bevel on this bottom edge here. I want to grab one of the other edges here and do the same thing. All right, so bring everybody back. Then run sub D, shade smooth. And then I want to bring all of the geometry back so I can see it in context in place. And then I can turn sub D back on. I can re-enable it for the body, and now you see it sits in a perfect circle. Now, let's not have to do this 2 more times. So I've got this one selected. I'm going to go into my array stack after I name it. So I'm going to call this model.nas.light, move it in our collection. And next thing I want to do is I want to go up here to the modifier stack, go to array modifier, and then I want to make a couple more of these. And you change your factor to move it to the distance away from the original you want. And as you'll see, they fall, once I create additional ones after that, they fall perfectly into place. Save my file. And I'm gonna do the whole parenting thing again. I'm gonna parent these lights to the body. Done. So now the lights are done as well. All right, so the next thing to make is a USB-C charging port or data port. I think it's a data port because I think you can hook a USB-C device like a drive to it. All right. So I'll scale these verts out to give it that rounded edge. Like I said, when you do this with sub D, you know, the top part will be fairly straight, but the sides there, because they're angled like that, will have a more pronounced bend to them, because that's what sub D does by its nature. Select these interfaces here, turn sub D on so I can see what I'm doing, and I want to bevel them. Just want to tighten them up a little bit. Doesn't have to be perfect because it's all going to be shadowy and black and dark, and you can't really see in here. So I don't need to put a lot of detail in here. I mean, you could if you wanted to, but for this use case, you just don't need to. And for here, I'm getting ready to make the little post. So select those three, scale them on X to 0, do the same on the other side. It's going to tighten them up vertically. It's going to align them. Now it gives me a nice rectangle shape. So I'll scale it down, scale it on Z, and I'll scale it a little bit on X. And this is that little post you see in the USB-C port. And then I want to extrude it out. Once I get it scaled down like I want. Boom, just like that. And just to reinforce the structural integrity, as we do with everything else, we select edges and we bevel them. So that's what I'm going to do next. Boom. Okay. Turn sub D back on. So now you can kind of see the basic overall shape that we're going to get here. We're still not quite done yet, but we're getting there. So what I want to do next is like where I did that inset. First I want to do is I want to come in here and select some of these edges. For the same reason, with sub D running, we want to tighten them up. Then we want to select these faces right here afterward. And I just want to give this thing the illusion that there's going to be some metal on here. So what I decided to do is select all these faces and I extruded them out just a hair. Not much, because the metal shouldn't just be totally sticking out like that. And because I've done that with sub D, now I got to come back in here to these edges, select them and bevel those, just so it's pronounced. You can see it actually pop in the viewport. Turn sub D back on so we can see what's happening here. Yeah, good enough. I don't need to spend too much time on that. Like I said, it's a feature of this model that not a lot of people from a distance are even gonna pay attention to. There are gonna be more things that pop out to the viewers' eyeballs there. All right, so now USB-C port's done. And there's only one more port to add on here, and that's the USB-A port. I think it's the USB 3 port, USB-A version 3. So I'm selecting the necessary faces that I think that I'm going to need to make the size and shape that I want. And I'm going to inset, and I'm using the inset here to kind of shape the port. I'm going to inset again. And this is going to allow me to extrude back into the body. I'm going to go a little further back on this one because it's a bigger port, and I want there to be less light that can come back up in here where you can see that it's not a ton of detail. Like I was saying in a couple videos back, like, don't over-engineer your modeling solutions if you don't have to. If it's something that, like a product, or you're really having to show a lot of detail, that's a different story. But in this case, this whole purpose of this is just to show you how to solve a problem of modeling such a thing. It's like a NAS. So, all right. Let's bevel these here on the outside. And let's grab all of these edges on the inside and do the same thing. We're just reinforcing the shape that we want here. And like I said before, we're restricting sub D's ability to run like crazy smoothing on everything. All right, so I ended up picking grabbing a wrong edge or something, and I tried to bevel it, and it came out funky looking. So I knew I had the wrong edge. So I'm just like showing you guys my process of doing this again. Just be real careful in what you're actually grabbing in here, so you don't go grabbing the wrong thing, and then you don't know why your bevel procedure looks kind of crazy. So even with me, I'm grabbing like really small stuff in here. And I'm working with a mouse that's pretty high resolution, so sometimes it grabs stuff I don't want it to. And I usually do this with a pen, with a stylus pen, and not with a mouse. But for the sake, what I found out in my videos was that you guys couldn't see when I was doing clicks, right click or left click with the stylus pen. For whatever reason, the screencast keys wouldn't pick that up. So now I'm having to model with a mouse again. So just for the videos here. All right, so let's inset. And what we're gonna do here is we're gonna scale this on Z and move it up on Z. This is that little blue post that you see in the USB-A port that lets you know it's a USB 3.0 port. The little blue piece of plastic that sticks out, that's what we're making now. So I'm just getting the size roughly what it looks like, and I'm gonna extrude it out. And then I'm gonna run bevels on all this stuff, just like before, for the same reasons as before. I mean, we're getting up in there pretty tight too, so just trying to make sure I got the right edges selected. I'm zooming in as best I can without going to X-ray mode, because to be honest with you, when I'm grabbing stuff in X-ray mode, sometimes it's just visually overwhelming. All right, so turn sub D back on. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Nice clean edges with sub D applied. I actually did a short video on how to solve that problem a while back. So go to my YouTube videos. I think it's under shorts, and check that out. Shows you how to do perfect selections or perfect bevel creases for sharp edges and with sub D applied. You'll find it. I think it's the video I've gotten the most views on so far. All right, so now we need to come back up to the drive bay, and we need to make the little lock for the little lock mechanism here. So I'm disabling sub D for a second. Basically using the same approach. I'm looking at the geometry. I'm looking at it in terms of like edges, verts, and faces, and I'm trying to figure out what do I need to do to make a particular shape that I want, given the existing geometry that I have. So I'm grabbing these faces, I'm insetting them, because insetting is giving me a barrier where I can manipulate things without manipulating the barrier on the outside and screwing everything up. So notice everything I'm changing here is not changing the shape of the button. If that makes sense. Did the inset again, and now I am extruding this inward. And notice, because we did the array, I'm only having to do it on this one. I'm not having to do it on the other. I'm going to use my same approach to nice sharp edges with sub D applied. That's the trick, is grabbing those little corner points right there. You'll see it's going to be a nice sharp edge when we re-enable sub D on this mesh right here. Okay, it's just a little time consuming, so I don't see that top face lit up, so I know I missed something. So go back in there. There we go. So now let's bevel this. And let's turn sub D back on, and bam, there you go. And we have a modeled NAS. So now let's roll right into doing materials. All right, so I want to select the body. I'm going to create a material called material.body. And very quickly, we're going to run through this. I'm just going to get the color I think is most closely matches what the thing looks like. If you guys want to pause this video at any time and look at any of my values, feel free to do so. But at this stage in the game with the video, we're gonna run through this like gangbusters. I'm creating a second one for the installation. I'm calling it black plastic. Just kind of giving a quick look. I'm in look dev mode, by the way, looking at this. So what I want to do now is I want to drag up my timeline, change it to shader editor, and in here I want to put like a little bump texture just to make it look a little bit more convincing. Because like I said, we are going to render this. You don't have to do this, but it does add a little bit of realism. It breaks up the lighting in different areas of the model, so it fools the eye a little bit more. So I'm bringing a noise texture. I'm going to bring in a bump node. I'm going to tie the bump node's normal to normal on the principal. I'm going to tie a factor from noise into the height of bump, and that's going to tie everything up. And then I go into the noise texture, and then I start tweaking on some settings in. Bring down the strength on the bump where it looks right. And I know you guys can't probably see this on the video. Maybe you can. I don't, because I know YouTube compresses a lot. But trust me, there's some texture there. It's not a lot, but it's subtle, but it's subtle on purpose. And I don't want too much roughness, so it's got like I think like almost 80% roughness, because I don't want this to reflect a lot of light. So now let's go in here and let's take plastic and let's start selecting areas of the mesh I know are just going to be all black, like the feet, and just apply that same texture we just made to all that stuff. That saves us a lot of time there. Okay, so the feet are done. That insulation around the drive bay is done. I just applied the body of metal to the button there, the power button. So now we need to make a new material for these lights. And right now I just want it to be like kind of like a plasticky glass material. So I'm gonna create a new material, call this material.lighting. I'm just going to crank that up to white, turn the roughness down a bit. Like I said, pause if you want the actual values. Turn transmission up so you can see through it, so light will cast through it like glass or transparent plastic. And what I want to do here is now that I got that texture done, or that material done, I want to come in here back to my button that already has material body applied to it. I want to hit the plus button, create a new entry for our material lighting, and I'm going here in the faces of the button. I'm selecting the areas that I want this applied to, as you see right now. And then if you look in the material panel, you'll see a little button that says assign. I'm telling Blender, hey Blender, because I've got this material lighting selected, which I don't yet, but you'll see I'll do it first. I want you to apply this selection to that, or I should say, apply this selected material to this face selection that I've got in my mesh. And now it applied it to it specifically. So I can have one mesh with one set of geometry having multiple materials in different places of it. So now I'm going to go back in here in the USB-C port, and that face that I selected around there, where I told you earlier, I'm going to try to give it the illusion that that's the metal or aluminum part on the USB-C port. I'm just selecting these faces. I'm literally going to do the same thing again. I'm just going to do a different material. All right, so I'm selecting these faces and all that stuff on the inside right there that's usually reflective like you see in a USB-C port. Just selecting faces is all I'm doing. And then I'm going to come back in here where it's got, nope, don't want that. Make sure I grab all these little beveled faces too. There's some of them real tiny in there. I'm just making sure I'm just grabbing all this stuff. Because if you leave anything out, and you will see that in this video where I missed a couple of faces, you'll see it clearly in the shading of the materials here. You have to go back in there and tweak it and grab it. I'm just trying to grab everything in the first go around. So now I'm going to go back to my materials panel. I want to create the plus, make a new material, assign it. Now I can name it and change it. I'm gonna call it material.aluminum. Basically, I'm just gonna crank the metallic all the way up to 1 and then crank down the roughness. Basic metal. That's all you need to do. Don't need to over-engineer it. You can see it's kind of shiny even in look dev. I'm having a little bit of issue like moving around here. Now currently the little post is still the same material as the body. So I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to select all of that post. I'm going to select all that stuff behind it. And I'm just going to apply that black plastic to it, because all I care about is black and it's not reflecting a lot of light. I don't care about the texture. That's going to be perfect for this exercise. Notice I'm making sure to grab like those little beveled edges too. Okay. Hit the plus, and then I go back up in there where my data selection is, where my existing materials are, and I just select it and it pulls it in. I hit assign, and bam, we're in business. Now I can turn sub D back on, and now you can see it. You can see the metal where it's shiny, the aluminum. You see where it's black, where the little post is. Looks pretty good. All right, let's do the same thing, but on the USB A port. But you're gonna see I'm gonna create a new material for that post there. So let's just select all these faces. Like I said, I'm hammering through this as fast as I can go, while still trying to be somewhat detailed about my selections. And some of them get a little tricky, because we get in these tight little spaces and it gets a little harder to grab stuff sometimes. Okay. Like I said, yet again, I'm making sure to grab these little beveled edges too, these little tiny little parts right here. So I want them turning yellow in my selection. All right. This is the part that's not as fun as all the selecting of stuff. It's so time consuming. And the thing is, I don't need to create a vertex group for this because I'm only selecting it once. Also, having to select this multiple times, you definitely want to create a vertex group, and it makes it a lot faster. So just to keep boring you guys from all the selection, I went ahead and just disable or trim that out in the video, I should say. So I am going to select the post because I do want you to see what's going to happen here. And if you notice, I'm dragging and selecting too as best I can, because that'll grab everything that comes across that drag mark. Got to have pretty good eyesight to see the fact those weren't selected. There you go. There's one at the bottom. Just one top here. I'm just making sure I got everybody and everything. So I want this to look right. Okay. I think we're good. All right. So let's go back to materials. Let's create the plus. Make a new material. Assign it. Notice it turned white. I'm going to call this material.usb. And basically what that means is that's just my own naming convention, so I know what it is. I'm gonna go up here into the color wheel and go up into the blues, and I'm gonna pick a color that closely resembles that blue color that you see on that USB 3.0 port. That's all I'm doing, and that's how I'm able to color it in there. And it's gonna apply it to the selection, which is that post that we've got selected. Okay. And go back to object mode, and from here I can change it. I don't need to leave it selected. I can go back in and change that color if it looks too bright, which to me it does. I'm cranking down the saturation, I'm cranking down the lightness, and notice you see it changing in the viewport, and I don't even have to leave it selected. So now that's done. We're good with that. So we save everything out. We're now done with all of the buttons and lights and all that stuff on the front of the NAS for now. Yep, give you a close-in view so you can see all the work we got done. Then you can see the reflection from the blue into the metal, the aluminum. All right. So now let's tackle these drive bays. So let's go back into materials. Let's pick the body material, because the majority of it's that color. And then I want to come in here and kind of do the same type of process. I want to go to face selection mode, and I want to start grabbing stuff that I know needs to be a particular color. So I'm gonna start grabbing this lock mechanism here. And I'm gonna go as fast as I can. So like I said, I don't bore you guys with all of this, but I am allowing you to see that, like, I'm trying to be mindful of selections that I may not get. Keep in mind bevels. All right, so now we got all that selected. Let's go back in here and let's select the plastic. That way we don't have to create it again. We can use it off the same data from the original material we created. Now you can see I missed a little spot. So there's two little areas of gray at the top and the bottom. That means there's a bevel in there I didn't get. So I go back in edit mode, face select mode, just drag across and try to get it, and then hit assign, and then it'll assign it to that little section as well, and then we're good to go. I'm just looking it over, make sure I got everything. It looks like I do. All right, so what I want to do is I'm gonna create a new material here, because there's a little section right here is a little bit slightly darker colored metal than the main metal. So I'm just selecting these faces here. And like I said, I'll say this again, the good thing is we only have to do this on one of them, and the other one will automatically inherit these changes. So we got to get in here where we extruded that in and then extruded that lock mechanism back out. I got to make sure to get in here and get all of this too, because if lighting hits this at a certain angle, I want to make sure that color goes all the way back in there. Now, I don't need to get the stuff that you're never going to see, but I just need to get the stuff that we might see, right? So that's why I'm trying to get down there in that crevice a little bit better, because I want to apply that color to it as well. And as you see, I'm having a little bit of issues trying to hit the lock mechanism and not necessarily hit these faces back here. All right, so I think we're good now. I think we got everybody now. So what I want to do is come down here, hit assign, and then I start screwing with the colors, and I got it done. I'm just kind of fast forwarding it up just to kind of make this video a little bit shorter. I'm gonna come back to my lights here. So you see in the materials panel, I've got the lighting material selected, and I want the lights to glow. So I'm gonna go down to emission, and I'm gonna give it a strength of 2. There's another part of this video I want to show you guys. You can't tell it's glowing, but it's glowing. It's emitting light. So now what I want to do is I want to do a partial, bring in a camera, size the camera up. There's a reason why I'm doing this. Go into my collection, select the camera object, and I'm just going to kind of, I'm not trying to do like a fancy composition. I'm just trying to get it all in view so I can see it. And I want to do a test render here in a minute. We're going to do a plane first, give it like a little backdrop. This is optional. You don't have to do this, but I just felt like I might as well go ahead and do it, because I was going to create a thumbnail for you guys for this video all in one shot. I just want the sub D on it. I don't care about tightening up the edges. Actually, the best way to tighten up the edges on it, if you ever want to, is use a crease. It's non-destructive. You don't have to bevel it and worry about other loop cuts. So all I'm trying to do is render enough of this where I have the lights that have the emission in the scene. I don't need to finish out the entire render of this. I just need to get enough of it where I can see all that really good. You can see I'm going to stop the render. Okay, now I want to do is I want to go to the compositor, and I'll turn on use nodes, and notice it cached it. It cached that much of the render into the viewport here, and now I can work with it, because all I care about is making change to the lights. I'm not trying to make changes really to anything else. So I move the backdrop into view so I can see the lights, and I'm going to bring in a glare node. Boom, as soon as I pop it in there and you see it gets connected up, you see something happen to where those lights are. And I'm going to change it to fog glow, and I'm just going to start tweaking on the threshold a little bit. I'm going to pull it down a little bit off of 1 into the it's not a negative yet, but like let's see, 0.010 looks pretty nice. But to be honest, with the lighting that dark, it's going to bloom everything in the scene. But I'm just trying to go in here in the compositor and tweak on it a little bit. And I changed the mix values just a little bit. I'm going to come back out the layout, and I'm getting ready to change the HDRI, but I'm going to do it offline. So see, it's a lot brighter now. And I'm going to select my backdrop here. I'm going to darken it instead. Crank up the roughness, and then finally I get a view like this, and this is the final version with the values all tweaked out. You've done a good job. Congratulations, and thanks for seeing the video.